Good evening, everyone. 7:31 on 22nd of June. This is the longest day of the year, right? Everybody's looking quizzical.
Yesterday
I thought
Mayor.
yesterday, the 21st, excuse me. Oh, thank you, Dale, for going this way. Like, oh, okay, that means yesterday. That was Solstice, right? That must have been right. Okay, second longest day of the year. Welcome, everyone. And let us get started with the pledge, and then we will move into our work session agenda. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I just want to say that Village Manager Diatori will not be joining us tonight, but we have a Deputy Village Manager, Maddi, who's looking for something. Okay, we're good. All right, so this is a work session. Still, I think we would like to at least hear if there are any announcements for the public good. I believe that Trustee White has something to say.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that this Saturday, June 25th at 11 a.m. at Market Square, our village historian, Joyce Cole, will be holding an historic scavenger hunt. And I imagine that one will have clues and have to run around and find various things around downtown of a historic nature. So that sounds like a lot of fun. I plan to go. And it's to register, go to villageofossining.org. Yeah.
I didn't even know that was on the website, and I was just on the website earlier. Okay, I must have missed that one. What do I get like when I win this thing? Because you know I'm going to be winning this.
You're gonna have to ask Joyce. I don't know about that. Oh, I'm going to be winning. I'm going to be winning.
You get to go to another scavenger hunt.
What was that?
You get to go to another scavenger hunt.
Oh, great. I'm awful at these things. I feel very pressured, and I totally am never the winner, but I do enjoy them. So might see everyone there. It's nice. It's a great idea. Okay, that was the announcement. Yes, Dana? Okay, anybody else have announcements?
Yeah, I just have one quick one. This Saturday, the 25th,
Fifth.
is the annual Ossining Fire Department inspection. Just want to make people aware, if you do park in the train station on Saturday, or plan on parking in the train station on Saturday, Friday night we will be blocking off the west parking alongside the park, so we have room for the apparatus to be on Saturday for the inspection. And it's usually not too bad. We don't get any really complaints, but I'm just throwing a heads up out there. This Saturday will be our annual inspection down at the riverfront.
Always a fun time. So, Maddi, I'm assuming that Westerly was told, and apartment building and all that. Nope, you're
I
on mute.
believe that they were. I will check in with Karen about that
Oh,
to confirm.
Okay, great. Still time. It's Wednesday, so good timing there. Anybody else? Okay, I will just say that earlier today, I was not in Ossining, but sometimes mayors do leave the borders, so to speak, the invisible borders. There was a big to-do at Regeneron with the governor and everybody from county and our state, New York state legislators, and people, the governor herself, and then the governor's office. So Regeneron announced that they will be breaking ground today on a really large project, multi-year project, to build more labs on their campus, and it's in Tarrytown. The important thing for the rest of us folks who are there, and there were mayors from other communities as well as county legislators, is that in addition to creating 10,000 jobs over the past few years, they are now committed to another 1,000 jobs this coming year. Jobs that are good paying jobs, high paying. Many people in our community actually work in Regeneron. It was a really interesting, groundbreaking. I thought it would be 10 minutes or so. It ended up being a couple of hours. There's a lot of information about the pharmaceutical industry, and also as an employer and how they plan to stay in New York. They're one of the few pharmas that are in New York. And it's sort of, I was sitting next to a couple of people that said we've got to sort of do more with them. Regeneron already does volunteer work. Their employees do volunteer work at the Austin Children's Center and a bunch of other places. And I know many people who live here work there. It's literally 5 miles from here. So very exciting to see employment being created and employment at all levels of the socioeconomic. They also, for those that don't know, run the Regeneron contest. It's a national contest that helps with scholarships to college. They also have high school scholarships. I say that because those high school internships and mentorships, I didn't mean to say scholarships, are super important if you have children. It's not just public school kids, it's also private school kids. And I know we do have some Catholic schools in our community. Get the word out, because getting a mentorship there actually really sets you up for different opportunities that are wide open, which I learned about today. So I'm sharing that with my colleagues in the gallery, our local government, but also, the other folks. Apparently they're building, I can't imagine the size because the square footage comes to like 17 football fields, the governor said. I don't even know what that looks like. I feel like that's bigger than our entire, than all of Austin. So I have like no idea what 17 football fields look like stacked up, but apparently, and it's got all this design elements for the environment and all sorts of really neat things. So that was sort of exciting. I don't really get to do that very often. So I wanted to share that because it was a bit exciting to be there. And I was going to, it was already mentioned what was going on this weekend, and I hope everybody enjoys the weather. I've gotten a number of emails about July 4th fireworks. They're back on this year. The village actually doesn't run the fireworks. It's really the town. And I think that's the right place to ask a lot of the questions, but certainly we're involved. It's a huge affair. And yes, they're back on this summer after being absent for a while. So all good stuff, and we're off and running. Work session. I turn it over to you, Ms. Zachacz.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Board. Good evening, everybody. So first on our rather short agenda tonight is going to be what I hope is a short conversation with Sustainable Westchester. We have Nick Tidro here with us tonight. For those who have been following along at home on this sort of ever evolving process with the community choice aggregation program, because the energy markets have been so volatile over the past couple months, during which time we've actually run through the end of our contract. Sustainable Westchester has come to us a few times, at first in hopes of extending the current contract by about 6 months or so. After, I believe, the second attempt to set a not to exceed number, the governing body for them told us that we were in fact out of time to extend that original contract, and that we actually now need to begin a contract anew. So folks in the community may have received a postcard. I know that you've heard it from us in the village, and I'm sure the town as well, that effective June 30th, we are no longer going to be in the CCA program, hopefully for a very, very short window until such time as a new contract has been signed. So Nick is here tonight to talk to us about the status of the MOU. I know Stuart has gotten more than a couple correspondences from Sustainable Westchester with details about changes that the team is putting forth. Obviously, they are working very quickly to make sure that we again don't exceed the not to exceed price that's being contemplated. So time is sort of the essence here. I will turn it over to Nick if he can explain it better than I did. Thanks, Nick.
That was a great summary, so I think we're all set. But thanks, Maddi. And just on a personal note, I happen to be a Village of Austining resident myself, so it's great to be here. Thank you, Mayor and trustees, for having me, and apologies, Stuart, for all of those emails and changes we've worked on. So I'll just share my screen here, and you all are well familiar, it seems like, with the program and stuff, so I won't belabor too many of these background slides or anything. But as Maddi just well summarized, we've made 2 attempts since the start of this year to try and secure a short-term extension in order to bridge a gap to get to through the summer and look towards that time frame to execute on a new long-term contract for the energy supply. And again, we've missed those targets twice that we've come and set with you all and the rest of the municipalities that participate, unfortunately, during this time. And subsequently, now we're past the point where we can have a continuous service starting in July. So we are going to have to, unfortunately, drop all the participants from the Con Edison territory back to Con Edison's electricity supply for an interim period until such time where we can finally execute on an agreement. So we'll be looking to now, move forward with the long-term agreement rather than this extension we've been talking about previously, and to avoid, being caught again and thwarted by a market that's just shooting up so rapidly in a really truncated period of time as it's been doing over these last few months, especially. We're changing the participation MOU to what we understand to be more standard municipal language of lowest responsible bidder or best value language, so we can, have a bit more flexibility with assessing bids when we get them here at the time where we're going to run that solicitation. So, we're going to I'll provide a little bit more background here about what we've gone through over these past few months in this effort to execute an extension, what's been happening in the market, and answer any questions you all might have about what this all means and any more context I can provide about what we're going through. So thank you for, again, your support as always and deliberation on this matter. What Sustainable Westchester is, a nonprofit consortium of municipalities in the county, including Westchester County itself, and Westchester Power. 29 of those municipalities actually participate in that program, including Ossining Village and Town. So again, any recap for anyone out there who may be unfamiliar, we've been around since 2016. We leverage the collective power of municipalities to run this shared service program and negotiate really competitive electricity supply contracts for residents and small businesses, prioritizing renewable energy as the primary offering and being the driver of forging a clean energy future for our county, for the state, and being on the leading edge of that. Fixed rates are a main feature of our program as well and provide a lot of stability and predictability for folks, especially those folks who are carefully watching their bills month-to-month basis, and showed its value a lot in the past year, really, and especially in times like January, where we had huge spikes with Con Edison, and folks in our program had that stable cost for their supply side anyway. And then again, you're participating in our program is investing back into a community-based organization where we're, able to help launch and run these other important programs and initiatives that are all part of building a sustainable future. So the opt-out format, as a reminder, is a major feature of this program as well. So that allows us to maximize that buying power of our communities when we go and do these auctions or solicitations where ESCOs are competing against each other for our contract and supply. And then, it's no different than what everyone's had before when the utility was just the default supplier. Now you just have a community-based designated supplier instead. Consumer-friendly program, folks can join or leave whenever they want with no contract fees or penalties. And we have two options, not just the renewable, but also a more cost-effective standard supply. And then an important reminder, we don't guarantee savings in this program, and we cannot do that because we don't predict what the utility will charge you on a month-to-month basis, as their rate is variable. They're purchasing on a rolling basis with the market. So what the market's doing generally is what their prices are doing. But we do, again, provide that cost assurance on a month-to-month basis. And we've been lucky enough to be very competitive, historically speaking, with the utility on price. To that end, just a little summary here of what we've done all the time in this contract in particular. So we're coming to the end of an 18-month contract that started in January of last year, and the Con Edison average, due in large part to these recent months where we've really had this spike in volatility, has actually been a bit more expensive than even our renewable supply option, which of course renewable has a premium associated to it in terms of cost compared to sort of your just market-based cheapest you can get mixed fuel offering. So both of our supply options in terms of rate have performed really well for this contract, which is of course good for participants. Gravy on top of the renewable aspect. And then all time 7.6 cents per kilowatt hour standard has been even more cost effective than that rough average on Edison. Renewable, not very far behind. So the difference of a couple quarters or something, maybe a month. So anyway, We are headed to the end of this current contract, however, in June. Oh, and then of course the environmental impact, the most important reason we're here, roughly 1.1 million metric tons of CO2 mitigated from the atmosphere in that time. And this is just a summary again of what the value adds are and benefits of this program for you all. Let's keep going to the meat and potatoes here. This is the letter that folks Maddi was referencing should have got by now, alerting them if you're a participant in the program that we are in fact going on pause, and that's what's going to happen from the consumer experience. You're going to be switching back to Con Edison on your first meter read date, July 1st, and pointing you to different resources and giving you a rough idea of what the next steps will be, and how to stay informed. So keep your eye out for that if you didn't see that. And I know the village has put out information as well in support of that. So thank you. Already talked about missing the window. We were also, creating space to do this new procurement model. We've been talking about the sleeving model that would allow us to tap into the wholesale market. Still going to take more time to have that fully ready and going. But what we've been seeing is near-term pricing is just continually high and volatile, and really that short-term extension is not a viable option at this point, as I mentioned. So looking towards that long-term contract and trying to find the most advantageous spot within that plan to execute on. So right now, what we're recommending and seeing as the most sensible option is doing that solicitation for our normal solicitation, really, which is those varying periods of 1 to 3 years roughly, where we solicit those prices from the ESCOs and assess those for what the best value is. And this is just a visual of what I'm talking about in terms of volatility and spiking. There's a lot of geopolitical things, of course, the war in Ukraine contributing to that, a lot of seasonal temperature spiking, extreme weather, stress on the grid, and various other factors out there that exist that probably aren't going away for a while from what we understand. So continued pressure, much like many other commodities and things out there right now that you're paying a lot of money for and are going up in price. So an unfortunate situation. This graph just shows you, when we did the first MOU, when we had our first price not to exceed and started going to municipalities, this is down at the bottom of this graph here. And then of course, as we're going through time and that price is just shooting through the roof and moving past where we had it set our price target. Then again, this middle part where we hit the reset and did another MOU price not to exceed, did our roadshow to go out and get participation buy-in for that. We can just continue to see spiking, not as drastic, but still very drastic, historically speaking, and for this commodity. And we talk about natural gas, because it's the predominant fuel for electricity. So what natural gas prices are doing dictates pretty much what electricity costs are going to be. So going from that short period of time from not even $5.50 per unit to 8.636 is an incredible. So moving forward, like I said, we're going to target a fall resumption of the program. You should have gotten your letters, as I mentioned. We're going to hold the solicitation here this summer in the not too distant future. And then once we successfully lock in an agreement with everybody on board, hopefully, we'll do another mailing and things will function as they typically do with contract renewals, and folks will get their letters, saying here's a 30-day window to opt out or change supply ahead of the program relaunch date. So, again, I guess this will be the third time you've seen us probably in the last few months, but it's difficult to have to pause the program, very untimely and frustrating, and a lot of emotions related to that. But we're gonna remain steadfast in pushing this and getting a great value contract in a timely fashion and get the program back up and running, because we understand the value that it brings to the communities. We are to do this painful step as well in the NICEAG communities, and restarted their services actually in March, and have been fortunate with that. Turning out to be pretty good. So hopefully we'll be able to replicate that. We're confident we'll be able to do something equally as valuable for our communities here. So and again, I already summarized this. This is what the letter looks like when it comes, just describing what's going on, what the details of the contract are, what enrollees can do, and how to get a hold of us. As an important note, though, for folks who are out there, maybe like the Susies of the world or something in our community, who, what do I do to support renewable energy in the meantime? If you are going out and you sign an ESCO contract, you wouldn't be part of an automatic re-enrollment. So If you were to just sit back and wait in the Con Edison supply, you'd automatically be re-enrolled. But yeah, if you were to sign a private contract, we wouldn't be able to take you out of that, of course. So you wouldn't automatically re-enroll and be notified of the program restart. You'd have to proactively, come exit your contract and come back and re-enroll. So just a note about that in terms of the mechanics of coming back into the program. So, okay, yeah, and then I'll just make a little quick pitch here for, Grid Rewards. It's just our demand response program, something you can do in the meantime to reduce your carbon footprint and actually, maybe make a little money. If you don't know about this at all, I know the village has been a great supporter of this already, but anyone who out there doesn't know, it's an app. You just connect your utility account to it. It gives you lots of tips on how to save energy, shows you where you use a lot of energy and how you can reduce that habit a little bit in different spots to have an impact. So most importantly, it alerts you to these peak periods where there's going to be a high demand and stress on the grid, and it incentivizes you to reduce your energy consumption. So these peak periods, you have to use these peaker plants that kick on, and they're really just inefficient, terrible for the environment, and costly. So, reducing our reliance on those, of course, is an important thing. So you're incentivized to do that as much as you can. Reduce your energy consumption during these demand periods. At the end of the year, you'll get a check that reflects, how well you did on that front. So, yeah, I'll leave it there. Here's the contact information if you want to reach out to us. But yeah, I'll leave it there for folks if you have questions. I just did the spiel with the town last night too, so I don't know if a lot of people come to the same both meetings or not. But
I doubt it. I mean, some might or not. Can you put back the gallery?
yeah, sure.
Great. So thank you very much, Nick, for that. And thank you for speaking at the New York speed. Very much appreciate it.
Yeah, you got it.
That's very helpful.
Yeah.
Are there questions? I have a couple of questions and comments, but I'd like to first go to the gallery and see if my colleagues have any questions or comments.
Hi, Nick. I just realized that I know you.
I do know you did. Sorry, it's Trustee White.
I didn't know. All these connections are coming together.
My hair is still cut. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I get a lot of envelopes in the mail from a group trying to get me to sign up for their energy programs.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I get confused as to all the various options that are going on. Now, your option, assuming I'm enrolled in it now, I will be re-enrolled when it starts again?
Yeah, if you were to, not go out and sign up with anybody else or sign a contract, you would be part of the automatic re-enrollment. And then you get another letter that hopefully, we changed it this time around too, with red lettering and stuff to try and get people's attention. But yeah,
So
you would
an envelope come to me that says Sustainable Westchester and all that stuff, and I'll recognize it and I won't confuse it with some other.
Yeah, it has the village seal on it as well. So I think in our example, we just had your seal here.
I get something from somebody called like Clear Choice Energy or.
Yeah, they do a lot of solicitation through the mail. That's not it.
I'm sticking with you.
Yes.
Right? All right.
It sounds good to me.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Anybody else?
Dana, I can look, or Trustee White, I can look that up for you too and let you know if you're in the program.
Okay. So I have a couple of questions. I did get the letter with our old logo, and so that was helpful because in the past it's hard to tell. I mean, Trustee White is right. So if I have a few questions. Number one, did everybody in Ossining get the same letter?
Yeah, they would have, even if they were a town or a village, everybody in the county got, or in the Con Ed aggregation got the same letter. The only difference would be the seal on it.
Okay. And so if you have solar panels, are you still a part of, because you're getting energy, so you're still a part of the program, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So this is your base energy supply. So your solar panels don't cover all your generation needs, right? You have intermittent periods at night and such and so forth. So you're still you have an energy demand outside of your solar generation. So
Yeah.
that gets
Not for
built
me
too.
so much. I actually cover almost everything, but I have solar panels. But I did get that question, and actually I had to sort of hesitate a bit and say, wow, you know, I don't know. It depends who you're with. But no, it doesn't. It's the same thing. It's Con Ed. And okay, so that's helpful. Look, I think what's happening is the volatility has caused you, the way you buy futures is totally messed you guys up. The idea of staying, when we signed up this years ago, was that it's a cooperative of municipalities and people and businesses that hopefully are powerful enough to sort of create enough size to buy futures and energy that give you, at the very least, on the average, the same price you would otherwise get, is the way I remember it being explained. Sometimes you do better and sometimes you do worse. You can see on that graph, Con Ed was actually 50% above and below. You averaged an average. I mean, you did okay in the aggregate, but now you're suffering from the volatility, and nobody who sells futures wants to sell it to you because they're going to be wrong almost all the time because the markets are so volatile. So if I'm hearing you guys right, you're revisiting how you do your contracts so that you have more flexibility in the future to pivot more quickly to go
Yes.
after the futures market. That's like the whole presentation to me, if I understand it, is that's what you're doing.
That will certainly, this will be probably the last contract, particularly for this group. The NYSEG and the Yonkers, they'll be probably wrapping up beforehand, but we're certainly making large overhauls, and Dan was the one who came before and talked about sleeving as like the first step of that. So we're definitely making changes with this MOU. The language on that is something that is providing more agility to that already right now. Part of it is the compliance, the mechanics of having to, what we were doing before with the price not to exceed, and then having to go to every municipality, talk about it.
Right.
Most of them pass resolutions to sign it. And, that's just a cumbersome process. When you have a market that's moving as fast as it is, by the time we got through 24, it was gone. So, yeah.
Well, it's easier to be one buyer than a cooperative of many who get to vote. We're only, I mean, I totally get that. I just want to make sure that I understand what we're talking about here, and the whole all the bonuses of better energy use, better for the environment, better education, those are bonuses. A lot of people do have to look at their pocketbooks. So anybody that's been doing this in the municipalities has done okay. Sometimes better, sometimes a little worse, but on the average, they did okay. Plus, you're getting all the benefit for the environment. So you'll get back to us when you guys redo the way you buy futures, essentially. And you want to stay large. You don't want your municipalities pulling out, because the size of the purchaser in the futures industry is super important. If you become too small, municipalities pull out, you will not be big enough to have any power. So when people say, why are you guys staying with this? That's the answer. In fact, you'd want to get more municipalities. There is, in the buying of futures, big is best. And the buying power has to be big. Otherwise, you're just, nobody cares about you. So good luck. I know that Maddi is like, at least for me, the go-to person for the environmental issues is including Sustainable Westchester. Glad to know we have a person living in our community. So
right here in downtown, probably not very far from here.
don't give your address, because
won't.
anybody now getting the mail will be sitting on your stoop waiting for an answer to that letter. That took me a couple of reads to understand it. I thought that it was well done. I just don't think this issue is that simple, except that people get their bill and go, oh my God, it's now costing me 30, 40, 50, 60, 80% more than it did a few months ago. People get that.
We changed, changed, you might notice, is we made every letter for every community Spanish, English. This is the first time we've done it.
I saw that.
We had space constraints to try. We had to make it a one-pager. So, it was kind of not ideal in this first iteration, but definitely something we're going to build.
I actually thought it's a complicated topic on some level, and it's a nascent issue. Like, not everyone walks around thinking about it. When they get gas in their car, they think about the price of oil. Otherwise, they're not really thinking about the futures of oil. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming here, and I know that if there are questions in the future, Maddi is very well versed to also answer our questions. And like, let's hope the price of oil and energy goes down and not up over the next 12 months.
Mayor, I would
Thank
just
you,
like
Nick.
to add two other just short things. Nick
Please.
mentioned the grid rewards program.
Yeah.
So I want to remind folks if that's something that you need more information on. I won an award last year, like for being like one of the grittiest rewards people in the community.
Wait. Let me pause right there. You want to state that again? You won an
Sure.
award for? I want to hear
Yeah.
that title again.
No, that was a made up title. But basically because I signed us up last year before the season began and we participated in every energy event by increasing our thermostat, we got back a pretty substantial check. So I just want to remind folks that's something you can do at home, but also we've done it this summer for all of our biggest municipal buildings.
Well, like the community center with
exactly.
a pool, like just shutting that down for an hour. I don't know the exact number, but it's huge. And sometimes people walk and say, oh, it's too warm in here, it's too cold. There's a reason. You shut the lights off throughout all the bathrooms in the building, you're saving something. So these are real things that people can do. So thank you. We're the grittiest. I like that. My next mayor's message will have that statement in it. And what was the second thing?
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be substantive. It could be, take your thermostat from 70 to 74. You barely even feel it. And then the second thing is I just wanted to thank Nick for being such an engaged part of our community. He was actually with us at the community meeting at the community center for the DRI last week. So it's good to have folks right in our own community who have their finger on the pulse. So Nick, thank you again.
Got my votes in. Yep. Thank you.
Yep.
And yeah, this is an amazing thing. So thank you all for.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the exciting meeting we have lined up. But if you wish to leave, you could do that as well. And thank you for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thank you for having me again. And your support as always of the program and the organization.
Thanks. Okay. Assistant Village Manager, Zachacz, what do we have?
Our second item, I will hand it directly over to Stuart. This is a conversation about a proposed license agreement for a retaining wall bordering or on village property on Narragansett. So Stuart, I will leave it to you.
Thank you, Maddi. Can you pull up the link there, which is the
I can.
the surveys?
Yes, give me one moment.
Thank you, folks.
How's that?
Perfect. Folks, this property, which you can see is at Narragansett and Grandview, is directly across from Vets Park. The current owners are Mr. and Mrs. Lozano. And if you can notice, and Maddi, if you could enlarge this just a little bit, it might help just for the folks. Okay, stop and scroll it up. Perfect. At the very bottom, if you can.
The other way.
Stop. You got it.
Okay.
At the very bottom, you can see where it says Narragansett. Above that, it says concrete walkway. And just above that is the retaining wall. You will notice that a portion of the retaining wall is on village-owned property, and a portion of the retaining wall is actually on the property of both what is 85 Narragansett and the adjoining property, which is 81 Narragansett. Over the past couple of, maybe even about a year, if not a little more, we have been getting some complaints about problems with this retaining wall. Rocks have been coming loose. It has caused people, instead of walking on Narragansett on the sidewalk, they've had to actually walk in Narragansett, which is a little dicey because, again, you are right where the curve is with Grandview. So we approached the property owners. When I say we, it was a meeting of the village manager, village engineer Fraioli, building inspector Augustinelli, and myself met with Mr. and Mrs. Lozano recently about ways that the situation can be resolved. Before I go further, let me just note, this retaining wall was there well before the Lozanos purchased this property in 2007. We don't have any records in the building department as to when this retaining wall was built. If you're familiar with the area, the property next door, which is 81, has a similar retaining wall, but it appears from what I've been told, because it does not reflect it on the survey, that retaining wall is in fact on the property of 81, not 85. So we don't know when these retaining walls were built, but the Lozanos have indicated that rather than move the retaining wall fully onto their property, which would be quite an expensive proposition. What they want to do is repair the retaining wall as is. Portions of the rock that came loose are actually at the DPW facility, the operations center. And the village engineer has indicated that when the Lozanos are prepared to do their work, we'll just bring that stone back and they can essentially replace it. And I understand they have a contractor, they have the work that is to be done, but because it does involve an area that is within the village's right of way, they would need a license agreement. This is similar to a situation that we had with the village last year, you may recall, involving property at 7 Denny Street, where there was a staircase that went to the upper units, and that staircase, when it came down, that staircase was in fact within the right of way, totally within the right of way. The village ultimately entered into a license agreement with the owners of 7 Denny Street so that they could replace and repair that staircase, but also giving the village certain rights of access if need be. I would propose a similar license agreement here with regard to the owners of 85 Narragansett. I should point out it's somewhat legible here at the very left-hand corner of the retaining wall, where it comes next to 81 Narragansett. It actually curves onto the driveway of 81 Narragansett. That portion of the retaining wall also probably needs to be repaired. We have suggested that the Lozanos speak with the owner of 81 Narragansett to sort of work on that together. If you go past the site now, you will notice that there is actually some protective fencing around the retaining wall that was put up by the DPW to avoid further rocks falling onto the sidewalk and onto the roadway. So this would be a license agreement. In the case, I know with 7 Denny, the cost of the license, or the cost, the fee for the license agreement was $500. It was a one-time fee. I would propose the same here. The Lozanos would have to have insurance, which would name the village as an additional insured. It would allow the village to make repairs to the area if necessary, and the Lozanos would then have to fix it again if need be. But this should allow for the retaining wall to be properly repaired so that we don't have similar issues with regard to the rocks coming out. What we think may be part of the problem is this house, if you're familiar, is up on a hill, and there are retaining walls further up the hill. There are also discharge pipes. Some of those pipes may be going in back of this particular retaining wall, therefore affecting the integrity of that wall. So the Lozanos are aware of this. As I said, there's been communication with the village engineer. There's been communication with the building inspector. All of this obviously would be inspected to make sure it's done correctly. But to do it, they would need the license agreement. And that's what would require the board authorizing the manager to sign a license agreement with the owners of 85 Narragansett to deal with this retaining wall, which again precedes these folks. And I have looked back at other deeds from prior owners to 85 Narragansett. None of them make reference to the retaining wall. I've checked with the building inspector. There are no records of when that retaining wall was constructed. There are no records of who requested it to be put up or inspections of the retaining wall. But what is no doubt, because this is one of 2 surveys, and this is a survey that it was done in 2017, is that the retaining wall, a portion of the retaining wall, is clearly on village-owned property. Any questions?
Okay, questions?
I'm looking at this wall on Google Earth
Sure,
house. It's an old wall.
right.
Yeah, and it's built, okay, so it's like river rock wall. It's, okay, I see. And the stones are falling out and, all right. Well,
They've already fallen out.
yeah, so I mean, I'm willing to do whatever we have to so that it can be fixed and it can be safe.
And the family then, and when they sell it, we will now memorialize the transaction. So when they sell this property, the next people will be also responsible. Is that how this license works?
Yes, the license agreement, one goes to any of their successors. It's a 99-year license agreement. It's also one that can be recorded. So it will formally be associated with the property in the Westchester County Clerk's office. So if anyone searches, they will see this license agreement as well.
Okay, and they're responsible for the wall. And
Yes,
so,
they're
and we will be
responsible for maintenance.
inspecting. So there's a, I didn't realize there was a pool up there. I mean, that's a steep hill. That's a very
Yes.
compact. So it makes sense. So the drainage, everything will be looked at by our people to make sure.
Some of the drainage, Mayor, was already diverted at the suggestion of both the village engineer and the building inspector. But clearly, the integrity of this wall has been affected by other water coming behind
Yeah.
it. So that's why we've got the condition as it is now.
All righty, any comments or questions? Those were my only questions. Anybody else?
I do.
Okay.
I'm in favor.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bob, you said what? You said you're in favor?
I was gonna say a couple things, but they pretty much got answered. So
Okay.
as far as I'm concerned, I'm in favor of going with this agreement.
Okay, Manny, you were saying something?
Yeah, I have questions. So I am obviously, most likely I'm looking at an old photo on Google or on Google Maps as well, sure. And I'm not sure if you, Stuart, know exactly what they're planning to do on the retaining wall. How do they want to reconstruct that? Because the way I'm looking at this is just a stack wall. It's literally, when I say stack wall, is rock on top of the rock on top of the rock. There's no mortar joints in between. The reason why is because they want water to run through the joints itself. That to me is not a fix. You know, obviously they did that a long time ago, and that's what they do. You know, that's how they did it. If they're planning to do the same thing again, my concern is in another year or 2 years or 4 years, the situation is going to be the same and they have to repair it back. That's one concern that I have. Within the same vein is, are they going in front of the planning board as well? So are they doing that as well as part of this process, or they're just going to repair this? Do you know?
There's at this point, Deputy Mayor, there was no discussion of them going to the planning board. It doesn't affect the site plan. It's a single family house, and it's a wall that is not tall enough that would otherwise require any review by
less than 3
the
feet.
PB.
So it's less than 3 feet. Pretty much that's the criteria in a way.
But as to your first question, we will certainly go over with the Lozanos what the repair is to be done. I know that there were some discussions by the village engineer with them in terms of that, because you are correct that if in fact all that's going to happen is they're just going to put the rocks back and the water is going to continue to go there and push it out, we're going to be looking at the same situation. That is not, but I know that they have spoken with a number of contractors in terms of what they propose to do, and we will certainly find out what that is. I will point out that under the terms of the license agreement, the maintenance of the wall is their responsibility, both on the village end as well as on the portion that is on their property. And I also mentioned that there is a similar wall at 81. As far as I know, we've not heard of reports of problems with that wall. But that would obviously be something to keep an eye on. The difference there is there's no indication that wall at 81 is within the village's right of way.
So thank you, Stuart, and that's helpful. I guess that, just a general comment on this one. It kind of does narrow a little bit on that section, sure. It narrows the sidewalk or the path itself. Not only that, my favorite sort of a phase of this past month has been poles. A light pole is right in the middle of that, and that makes it even narrow the path that the people actually walk by, especially in the stroller or anything like that. One people going sideways, that's what's going to happen in there. So that's sort of like my concern that I have. Not that I'm against it, because we've done this before. I think something that is pre-existing in a way, non-conforming, I'm okay with that. It's just the concept that, how people because that's the only sidewalk on the street. So if people do walk, that's the side that they're going to choose to walk because of the sidewalk.
Right.
That would be my only concern on this one, and I'm not sure how can we fix that.
I don't know. That's something I would, I'd have them discuss with the engineer and with, their contractor and with Joe as well to see if there would be anything that could be done. As I said, one of the earlier thoughts was that they would in fact entirely remove the wall onto their own property, which would remove the situation you've just mentioned. But that apparently was far more expensive than doing what they're proposing now. But we'll certainly look into it to see what it is. And as I said, it is an issue because we did get complaints, particularly of folks who either ride bicycles or moms with strollers or dads with strollers, because if there were rocks blocking it, they'd have to go into Narragansett. And again, you're right at the corner with Grandview. So someone coming around Grandview is not necessarily going to see someone walking in the street. So that's why we wanted to get that cleared up.
Yeah, and look, in theory, I'm okay with this, and just my concern is like the sidewalk. Obviously, I can based on this photo. I can only base on this photo. I haven't drive there lately myself, so it seems like some of the ground has been falling down a little bit and encroaching our property line itself. I want to call it. Right. So maintenance. If we do this agreement, that it seems like the majority of the board's in favor of this. My only suggestion or the caveat will be for them to actually maintain that line that is shown on the survey as well.
Okay. I understand. I don't think that should be an issue. I should also point out that I won't have a resolution if the board wants to go in that direction until July 6th. So that gives me 2 weeks to speak with the Lozanos to sort of make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of work that's going to be done. With regard to that. So, I can certainly, if the board is okay, have a resolution for the 6th, but also report back to the board before the 6th as to what in fact the plans are with regard to that location.
That'll be helpful. Thank you, Stuart.
Sure.
So a couple, just because Manny just struck on a couple of things that
Sure.
made me think a little bit here. So what happens if we don't do a license agreement?
If we don't do a license agreement, well, basically, we may end up being responsible for the wall.
All right, so this brings my next question.
Go ahead.
So we do the license agreement, and our concern is the stone. Also, now there's concern about the width of the walkway, but I think the stone really brings it to light because you got to step around it. Do we have any say as far as maybe they could put a supportive link fencing or something in front of it, something, not something that attractive, obviously, that would support the stones from falling onto the sidewalk? Do we have any say, seeing it is our village property, or once we do the license agreement, it's all on them?
No, well, if it's on our property and we're giving them a license agreement, we're giving them a license to basically invade village property.
Right.
If we want to say that as a condition for doing that, we want you to do X, as you said, perhaps put some sort of fencing there,
Right.
That's a possibility. One of the concerns I have sort of goes back to what the deputy mayor was saying, is that if you put a fence up, you may be cutting back even more the width of the sidewalk. But there may be other ways to look at that. And so it's another thing to discuss with them, because
Right.
we now have temporary fencing up because of the situation. So,
Right. Well, as you've seen on the side of roads where they've
Yep.
got rocks, where they've cut and they've wrapped it with a wire fencing or something like that.
Yep.
I'm not looking to impede any farther out, except maybe
Nope.
an inch or two, just something that would wrap tight to it, just to hold the stone from falling. 'Cause that's basically what we're talking about here.
That's correct.
It's the stone falling into the sidewalk. The actual license agreement, I'm okay with,
right.
but I would think I would like to maybe attach some sort of condition that they, all right, it's costly, and to move it back, I get that. So I can't imagine it's gonna cost them X to fix what it is, and Z to put a piece of fencing or wrap it with a wire support, something that, you know, to keep the stone from falling. And I think that would, you know, it's not going to fix the width, but it's going to fix the fact that, you know, in another year or two, they're going to be back in front of us because it fell again.
We
That's all. I'm
should-
just wondering, you know,
No,
I'm throwing
that
it
can-
out there.
You could have a condition like that if that's something the board was interested in. I can certainly discuss that with the Lozanos. I don't,
Mandy,
again,
what-
we're
what's
giving
the
them a
question?
license to use our property.
Right.
So if we want to impose a condition with regard to that, the answer is that can be done.
Manny, what's your thoughts on that?
You know, I'm okay with that. It's a similar, is a concept that you see on a highway, sure. When
Right.
they have rocks falling off, they usually have this netting in front of it so it
Yeah.
can hold up to it. Look, you know, they can do the same thing that they have there now. And what they can, you know, the new stones or the stones that they can just secure them with small mortar that they can just hide it within itself. But again, budget wise, I think the netting concept is the easiest way to do it. But again, I don't know what the repairs are. So I'll leave that. I think I agree with you, Bob. Yes, something like that, some sort of protection, they should definitely do that, just so something in the future won't happen again.
Is there any, I can't think of the word, any pipe or anything in the existing wall to relieve the pressure? They were just relying on the fact that it was going to run through the rocks.
I believe that the pipes are further up the hill. So I don't think there's a pipe that goes directly behind the wall, but I think the concern is that there was water coming from the pipes going down.
Yeah.
Because when they may empty their pool or discharge or things like that, it's going to come through all these different pipes. I don't think there's a pipe directly behind there, but there are pipes up the hill where
Yeah.
water would drain down.
I need, just by the Google and things on my 2017 picture, it shows 2 discharges on the top on the,
Right.
I want to say in the right corner within itself. So yes, and plus the water, you know, when it rains, you know, and so yeah, so I think putting some sort of protection plan, I think will be helpful too. Yeah, I agree with you, Bob.
Anybody else? All right, so for my, I drive by there all the time, and both houses have similar looks, so I don't particularly care what they do. I don't think the village has any responsibility. I think the damage was actually caused by them. So for me, we have no responsibility, and it went on way too long. And it's the only place to walk, so it has to be wide enough. They're gonna have to cut it back into their property in order to meet the standards so that a wheelchair and strollers can pass on that sidewalk. That's what matters, so people can walk. They're just not going to put the rocks up. They're going to have to cut a little to their property. And the drainage is a big deal because the incline there is a serious incline. But we also don't want to make this totally unaffordable to these folks and to whoever buys the house from them. But the wall is also similar to the wall, I think, in the house next door, also on this huge incline. So across from parks, it's heavily used, et cetera, et cetera. So just make sure that, from my perspective, I'm good with this. They're responsible forever and ever. They're not coming back to us. Any damage done, if it's in 2 years, 5 years, or 52 years, it's on them. We want to be reasonable, but the drainage, I think, is actually a problem, especially with in-ground pool. And they're going to have to be held responsible, and they're going to have to cut a little to their property, because that is a very tight spot to be walking with children and wheelchairs or anything else. To get to the park across the street. It's a tight spot, and there are cars there all the time. I'm not saying a lot of cars, but there are enough that this is an area that needs to be thoughtfully done. I leave it to the folks to do it. It sounds like the board, I don't know if Dana said she's in support. Dana, did you say you're in support? I'm in support. Did you say you're in support? And Omar, you said you were in support, or you didn't say? You're in support. Okay, so I think that's a go forward, and there's time over the next, there's a 5th Wednesday, just as a reminder. So that's why I think we're seeing this in a couple of weeks.
Thank you, folks.
That's great. I'm impressed that our folks kept the rocks, by the way. That is a very nice thing to do, because rocks are super expensive. I mean, tell Paul and company, it's really not their responsibility. So it's nice that they did that, so these folks can use the same rocks and redo it. It's a very nice thing to do for the community. to be that conscientious. Maddie?
Okay, last and not least, it's going to stay with Stuart and a little bit me. We're going to talk once again about a proposed local law, proposed local law 9 of 2022, which is revisions to chapter 250 of the Village Code, Vehicle and Traffic. This is a renewal of our conversation that we've had a couple times now about how we are proposing to improve municipal parking and train station lot parking. Stuart, I will certainly let you begin since you have
Thanks.
done the lion's share of the work.
Folks, you haven't seen the draft yet because I just sent one to Maddi with comments on the side. It's wonderful to, when I discovered that I could put all these comments on the side of things that I was doing. Didn't know I could do that. But what we're working on is chapter 250. We are not talking at this point about overnight parking. That's a whole different discussion and will be for a different matter. But this deals specifically with both the railroad parking, which we talked about before, municipal parking. I've changed all the section block and lot numbers, which now are the current ones, not the old plate block and lot numbers that they used in the code. One thing that actually came up as a result of Juneteenth was that we have to update our holidays, because Juneteenth is not listed as a holiday in the village in the book, in our code book. So what Maddi and I discussed is that we would look probably to what are essentially the federal holidays, which are a little bit not as broad as the state holidays. The state actually includes both Lincoln and Washington's birthday, but it does have Juneteenth. So we would put all those in there, so that this is important, so we can let the folks at Passport know, so that way no tickets would be issued for those days. We had a few that were issued on Juneteenth in error, and those we've dealt with. So we've taken care of that. So that's one thing that will be in the local law. Another thing that we have to deal with is that the local law throughout refers to parking tags. Tags for municipal parking, tags for railroad parking. There are no tags anymore. So we have to change all that, and to change it, they're going to be essentially called permits, and it's going to be obviously done by license plates, but no one will have a physical tag any longer. So that's something that will be in there. We've changed that. We've added, and this is something that's obviously subject to whatever the board wants to do. If you remember, we're going to be having additional parking along Central Avenue. What is now railroad parking will become, during the daytime, employee parking for businesses along Main Street, and at night would be overnight parking. Sort of in line with what's going on at 30 Water Street. I have dubbed that linear parking lot number 16. And we can obviously change it. The board can change it any way, but that essentially becomes another, if you want to call it quote unquote lot, where cars will be able to park using the permits that will be issued by the clerk's office. So we've changed that. We've changed the hours with some of the lots. If you remember, there's going to be different hours for parking that relate to the lots that are in Market Square, particularly where the farmers market is and across the street. I have changed, I've proposed to change the reference to what we now call Municipal Lot 2, which is at fire headquarters, because the fact of the matter is while it's municipal in the sense that it's a lot owned by the village, it is not a lot where we allow anyone other than either municipal employees or firefighters to park. And so the other parking restrictions that we have really shouldn't apply to that particular location, because it's a lot, but it's not a lot in that sense. So I gave Maddi a couple of questions. There were the Passport portal, which we are beginning to use. There are certain things that, in terms of how they calculate late fees on parking tickets, which are contrary to what we have in our code because their program doesn't allow them to calculate it that way. Essentially, we calculate from the date the ticket is issued. They want it from the date essentially of the determination in the court. We will have to, Maddi and I are going to set up a call with the folks at Passport to just confirm that, because that will be something that will have to also get changed so that we can have everything in line. That does, we will certainly notify the court, but this relates to violations of village code, not vehicle and traffic law. So it's not something that the court directly gets involved with, but obviously we want the court to know, where that all comes up. Again, there will be certain definitional changes. Trustee Fritchie, one of the things that we've done is we've put a definition of commercial vehicles at the very beginning of this chapter, so it's not all over the place. And basically that definition is similar to what we have in other sections of our code relating to the types of vehicles that would be considered commercial. They need not have commercial plates. If they have commercial writing on the outside and it appears that that's what they're used for, that's commercial. That's important because we do not allow commercial vehicles to park in any of our municipal lots. So this way, the definition is at the top. People will know it. One of the things I've suggested to Maddi, and I think we should work on, would essentially be somewhat similar to what we have now in the zoning code for the overlay districts, is effectively like a spreadsheet, which will list every single lot, list when you can park there, when and who can park there. And that would be for both the railroad lots as well as for the municipal lots, because we are going to be shifting some things around. If you'll recall, the lot that is across the street from 30 Water Street, which is actually the address is 31 Water Street, that will be, I believe, Maddi, day parking. So it will not be the regular tags that we have at the railroad. Also, if you remember, on Quimby Street on the west side of Westerly, those 22, I think, or 26 spaces will all be hourly, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, Monday through Sunday. So that also requires another change in the code, because generally you can't park on village streets between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. unless you have overnight. This particular area will be exempted from that requirement as long as the cars are in fact legally parked there. So if they've obviously expired time, they're going to get a ticket for that. And they could then get a ticket for being parked, from between 3 and 6 where they shouldn't be parked. But in any event, those are, as you see, one change sort of leads to another. One thing that we do have to work on, and I'm working on now, is redesignating our parking lots at the train station. If you are familiar with our code, we call them anywhere between areas 1 and areas, I think, 10. They are all designated generally by the former section, block, and lot numbers, but some don't have a designation. And so we're going to work on exactly making sure that we know which is which. So, for example, the 31 Water Street will be, as we said, our day parking area. You have the large parking fields, which are on the east side of the tracks, plus you also have parking on the west side of the tracks. All need to be, redesignated, because those designations, unfortunately, were never changed when we went first to a section, block, and lot, and also based upon the current setup of the spaces. Again, Metro North, through its contract vendee, LAZ, only has the parking along the fence on the west side of the tracks. That's all they have. Otherwise, it's all essentially village. And that's important, so in terms of people know where they have to park and where they can park and where they can't park. So that's also all going to be part of the code. That area, again, on the west side, that's going to remain as, we'll call it, just for the railroad permit parking. Again, it's not going to be railroad tag parking because we don't give out tags any longer. And I've been working with Sue on that so that we can get everything cleared. So there will be new names for a lot of the things that we now call tags, because we don't do tags any longer. But as Maddi has pointed out to me, basically the license plate readers, the LPR, will be able to essentially handle all of this. So if if they're going with the LPRs through the lot and they see a license that it does not have, is not registered with the clerk's office, that's a car that can be ticketed. The same as we'll be able to do in our muni lots with regard to all those locations. So that will make it a lot easier, less paper, nothing to be, essentially hung on the rear view mirror. The only thing that Maddi and I are going to discuss deals with the employee lots, particularly with regard to lot number 2 with OFD and employees at here at 16 Croton, as to whether or not that's going to be part of an LPR system or if that's going to remain as a hang tag system, something that we'll just have to work out. But it's a work in progress. I would expect that at the July 13th work session, I'll be able to actually have a local law for you to look at with all its, all the different changes. It's a lot of like pointing from here and then pointing back to there. One thing we have to work on is that when we passed the towing legislation, that legislation deals with allowing the police to have vehicles towed that are from village roadways. But municipal lots are not village roadways. So we will probably have to put something in to be at the towing or this, which will also allow, if need be, vehicles to be towed if they are either illegally parked in spaces for a particular period of time, or if they are blocking spaces. We need to have the ability to do that. Right now, our ability is somewhat limited because our towing is off of public streets. And so we're going to be working on that. I think it's taken a lot, but we've sort of gotten, I think, started with it. My guess is that by the time you see it on the 13th of July, most of Chapter 250 won't look like it looks like now, because there will be a lot of changes. There'll be a lot of deletions, particularly on the tag, with the tags, all that will come out. The references to the different lots will also change. At this point, we're not changing the numbering of the municipal lots. But again, that's, I know, Deputy Mayor, that's always been something you've talked about. It is unclear to me why we go 1, 2, 3, and then 5. I'm never sure whatever happened to 4, but that's what the code has at this point. But each lot will, certain lots will allow parking on certain, at certain times, others will not. And it's important because the timing in some of these lots will not be uniform. So where, for example, on some places we're going on a 7A to 7P, on other occasions we're going on an 8P to 6A or something like. So we're gonna, those are things that have to be worked out. And as I said, that's one of the reasons why I think the spreadsheet, which would actually be in the code, would be something that people could go turn out and say, okay, this is when I can do it. And we can also make that a standalone so that people can look at it. Sort of like if you're familiar with the zoning code, we have the schedules at the back. This would sort of be a traffic and enforcement schedule. So people will know when they can park at certain locations and what they need. Fees, again, will all be set by this board and will all be published in the annual fee schedule. And so we're not going to specifically refer to fees within the code, but the fees will be commensurate. So it's not going to be that someone will be able to essentially not have to pay a fee or pay a fee that is less than someone might be paying at a nearby location. So that's where we are with local law 9 at this stage. I hope again in 3 weeks on the 13th to have something for you folks to look at and actually discuss in some detail.
All right, I just one, thank you, Stuart.
Sure.
There was a lot to take in, but in reference to the State Street and the firehouse, and for employees and firefighters, we've had issues there with other people parking in back before. I'm presuming that what you're putting together here now gives the PD teeth to be able to write a ticket.
Yes.
Into that lot, because they were like, well, how do I write the ticket? Because there was no designation. if I could be saying it wrong, there was some reason that it couldn't hold, for writing a ticket.
Well,
And-
if I may, Trustee Pritchie, it's not entirely clear to me because even though it's designated as a municipal lot, Maddi, correct me, it specifically says that every space is only for OFD and village employees.
Right.
It's
Correct.
that's the only lot where it explicitly says that. So,
Okay.
but what this would allow then is, depending how we do it, either through a license plate reader or through hang tags, if you're not either registered through the license plate or have the hang tag, OPD will be able to give you a ticket for violating that you're parking in a lot where you're not allowed to park. So that will be there.
At any given time, any one of 200 or 300 members
Right.
could park in that lot, but how do we know that?
Well, that's something Maddi and I'll have to, work that out. There's a variety of ways to do it. License plate reader may be the easiest because they'll just know who it is.
Right.
And know by license plates.
We just contact the chief and give you a list of license plates that would be.
That may be the best way to do it. That's just something to think of. But again, as we do at the train station, if the license plate does not pop up,
Right.
in other words, that person's going to get a ticket.
Right, okay. That sounds like the way to go.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else? It is a lot to unpack. I am wondering, and it does prove, and we've talked about revisiting all of the zoning, is that when you pull one lever, other levers present themselves that you may not have even thought about in different ways and are then affected. So it's complicated in some ways, but that's what municipalities do. This is what we're supposed to do. I'm wondering if there's also an opportunity. So it's complicated, and I think it's great that we're taking it on, basically. I am wondering if this is an opportunity, this has been asked in the past, to rename some of these lots, like in human language, not by numbers that don't make sense to anybody, have no sequence anymore, but to actually call, Quimby, like Quimby East or West. And so people actually know where they are and what lot we're referring to, rather than lot 6, lot 10, because there's no sequencing, as we've learned from the parking and the mobility study, if I'm not mistaken. I don't want to add more work, but it just seems like this is an opportunity. I think most of us agreed that we should just name them for the locations they're at. And if there's 2 lots next to each other, one could be east, one could be west, north, south, whatever. But just something that's in human language with sign. I'm sorry.
I have a suggestion. Why don't we name them after past mayors?
Yeah. Well, there are places that name things after people, although people get very tricky. I got to tell you, you pay all the sign for signage and you find out the person had some criminal record you didn't know about. So it gets very iffy. But the idea of naming the I'm sorry.
I think what we talked about from a wayfinding perspective too, because I know Deputy Mayor, when we first started talking about this a long time ago, talked about maybe have the community participate in a naming contest or something of that nature. When we talked about it from a wayfinding perspective, though, if we had, REC 11 lot, that doesn't necessarily help with wayfinding because folks.
Which is why I know. I think it's a nice idea, and I don't mind honorary stuff, like, if we want to honor somebody and make that another place where there could be. But I really think calling something, Water Street, whatever, Quimby Street, whatever, I actually think helps people. And if you put a sign in the middle of the town and said there's more parking in Quimby, I think people at least go, okay, I know where that is. And who even knew there was a parking? I mean, I lived here for about a dozen years and I commuted every single day. Didn't know Quimby Street actually had parking. I mean, it is what it is. Anyway, I think it allows you, and if you then have to take a lot away or add a lot, it allows you to do that. Numbers, like people see 5, 6, 7, they think, oh, there must be a 1, 2, 3 somewhere or whatever it is. So I think that is there an opportunity, or are we adding more work is my question.
That's
here.
actually, Mayor, not a heavy lift, because the fact of the matter is, all it means is instead of lot 1, we could, that could be a municipal lot, that could be municipal building, if you want to call it, because that's what lot 1 is. So that's not a problem in terms of.
Okay, so I don't want to add more work, but maybe take the opportunity now to do this.
Where with the railroad, we have,
Okay.
Maddi and I'll have to talk about that, because I do like the idea, be it Quimby East or Quimby West, because you could do that. And the main lot could just be, Eastfield versus Westfield, and.
Yeah,
and-
but even in the parking lot, it could be just RR 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 for
Right.
each of the lots. I mean, then you know it's railroad. Like, I
That's
mean, I
fine.
just think that you don't
we-
have to actually even write
can
things
it can
out.
absolutely be done. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
so,
not,
and
that's
we
not
could
a
have
heavy
somebody
lift.
look at it. I mean, I like the idea of names and stuff. I just think it's another project. Which might be okay, but you could do honorary, or you could do it as, I don't know. If I were in a business for, I'd say it's a great fundraiser, but but I think just the names, I'm thinking more in the helpfulness of it to people, and the practicality of it. So thank you for that. I think this is complicated, and we've talked about redoing all of the zoning, and we do have a project to look at that, that the board will be investigating how we might do that. But I think for now, this makes a lot of sense. So I appreciate the work. When you think we're going to look at this?
July 13th.
July 13th. Okay. Fabulous. All righty.
So
Thank
can
you.
can I add something to that, Mayor?
Oh, please.
So I really appreciate this, Maddi and Stuart, for you guys. Parking in general is not easy, and it just forget about it. I've been dealing now for many years, and one of the first people that actually got introduced, as you all know, one of the persons that knows well about parking is Linda Mangano. And that I had sit down with her several times in regards to this. One time I print all the maps and everything, including overnight and everything, and I got a great lesson on that one. That being said, so the resolution is going to be July 13, Stuart, but I think the implementation, when are we looking to do this, Maddi? I guess that falls under you,
Well,
caveat, so to speak, sure.
yeah. So Stuart, if I heard you correctly, you're going to bring this local law draft back in front of the board
On the
at that
13th.
date. So implementation, we're talking like probably very early fall.
Right,
I know.
because I'm sorry, Maddie, if you figure, folks, that let's say you're okay to what we have on the 13th. On the 20th, you would call for a public hearing. That would be in early August. Your public hearing would then be, and then you vote on it the middle of August. So you're probably, as Maddi says, sometime in the fall to get this. We do want to get this implemented as quickly as we can. One, because we'll be coming up with renewals at the end of the year. And again, we don't use tags anymore. It's sort of like our code is in a sense outdated in that regard, even though we changed a lot of the language in the tag parking as recently as 2 years ago, it's not there. So, I mean, the idea would be to get this hopefully approved, sometime, August, looking at probably a late September implementation, with everything, so that we can get that done. Because that will also dovetail with around the time that the clerk starts sending out applications for next year for trains and things like that. So it would all work.
That'd be
Yeah,
great.
I will just, piggyback on that in that, once this law is passed, we should be able to pick up pretty quickly. When we introduced the passport app, we already had these zones in mind. So we already have signage, they're already set up in the system. So it'll really only be a matter of, education, right, for the public. We could turn this on with a flick of a switch for the most part. So
That'll be very helpful. And I think part of that, obviously, depending on how we see the progress of this, sure, from July 13 to the next month or the next weeks after that, I think we should, Maddi, whoever's helping you with this, if it's just you doing this, the signage education flyer, whatever, PDF, so we can do, a bunch of stuff, even with including obviously the mayor's message, so we can kind of educate everybody that could be using this. So let me ask you a topic within the same thing. So you pretty much we have addressed municipal parking lots in general right now. I think we have addressed now. We're addressing this parking now. So I'm assuming next is overnight parking.
Overnight parking, I had hoped to tackle this summer, but we're a little delayed because of a couple things, the DRI being a big one. The overnight is largely dependent on getting the vehicle mounted license plate reader up to snuff. We finally made that connection today between the two vendors. So basically the same handheld ones that our parking enforcement staff are using, the same program is going to be loaded onto that, the license plate reader. I know the board's very familiar with what those do. So basically someone will be able to drive past very slowly and it'll read the plates, which is exactly the system that they have in Croton that they showed to us a couple of years ago when we started the project. What we are going to probably want to talk about as a sort of a tentacle of the hardship parking conversation is sort of revisiting some of the recommendations from the mobility and parking study in terms of either doing something with pricing, expanding supply in some way that I haven't, nightmared up quite yet. So that one is certainly the most complicated. Everything else is just a matter of paperwork and signage, for lack of better. The hardship is going to be a heavy
Yeah,
lift.
and I agree with you. And I think that's going to be obviously several months. It's not
Oh,
just writing a law at that essence, because I think that's, not to take anything away from you, Stuart, believe me, that's, I want to say, a little bit of a simple process. I think all the other stuff, one of the reason why I'm asking this is because, as we all know, as a boards, and I've been hearing this for the past couple months, even more now, there are some streets that we should be looking into it, either to increase or decrease the portions of that, because some of that stuff is encroaching on the right of way of the roads itself. So instead of having 2 lanes, now you only have a lane and a quarter for a 2-way traffic situation. So, that's something that we should start looking into that as well, as an overall picture of what are we doing in different neighborhoods as well, where we have overnight parking, or we may be thinking of adding more overnight parking if that's the case. But that goes back to a little bit more of, the need and the demand as well. And that brings over to other issues, housing and all this other stuff. So, I'm looking forward to see more the complex part of this conversation, or parking conversation. So whenever you're ready, bring it on.
So we chunk it out, because we've all learned that, as we said, one lever pulls other levers, and I mean, it's like a holistic community. So folks, it sounds like we're pretty much in agreement, with some input for a little bit more here and some thoughtfulness there. It's 8:53. Unless I'm missing something, we have another meeting after this. We have executive session. So I think we are ready to move forward. Yes.
Yep. I just want to say thank you to Stuart again, because this is, as mentioned, an incredibly heavy, very detailed, tactical project. So thanks to him. And I think we're headed into a special meeting.
But for geeks like me, oh my God, this is fun.
Okay.
But we'll just put that to the side.
I love that. I'm getting all these great quotes tonight.
We'll just leave that there. Folks, can I have a motion to adjourn the work session to go into special session, please?
So move.
Need a
Second.
second. There you go.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We are,
Thank you, folks. We're going to move now into special session, special meeting.
and that is it. We're starting at 8:54. Let me just take attendance. Trustee Fritchie,
I am present.
Trustee Lopez,
Here, aye, yes.
Trustee White,
Present.
Deputy Mayor Quezada,
Here. Present.
and Mayor Levin.
Here.
Okay, we've done the pledge, we've done the roll call. Is there anyone, I'm not looking at the screen here, is there anyone in the public who wishes to comment on any of the resolutions on tonight's special meeting agenda? Not seeing anyone. Let's go to Resolution A, authorizing the village manager to sign a memorandum of understanding with Sustainable Westchester for participation in the Westchester Power Contract for communities in the Con Edison service territory. Whereas the Village of Ossining adopted local legislation to enable community choice aggregation, Village of Ossining Code Chapter 10, and whereas for participating municipalities in the Con Edison service territory, such as the Village of Ossining, the current electric service agreement, ESA, for the Sustainable Westchester CCA program will terminate on the first meter read date after June 30, 2022. And whereas as a member of Sustainable Westchester in good standing and participant in the Sustainable Westchester CCA program, the village wishes to continue to engage the services of Sustainable Westchester as the program manager for community choice aggregation for the operation and maintenance of the program. Now therefore be it resolved that upon review by the Corporation Counsel, the village manager is authorized to sign a memorandum of understanding with Sustainable Westchester, Inc., 40 Green Street, Mount Kisco, New York, 10549, for participation in the Westchester Power contract for communities in the Con Edison service territory, and be it further resolved that the purpose of the MOU is to A, establish the village's participation in the CCA program to be managed by Sustainable Westchester under the 2022 electric service agreement, B, to affirm that the village and Sustainable Westchester, Inc. agree to adhere to the terms and conditions of the 2022 ESA in the event the 2022 ESA is executed, and C, to affirm that the village and Sustainable Westchester agree to execute the 2022 ESA subject to the conditions of review and approval outlined in the memorandum of understanding. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Stuart,
All those in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Resolution B, authorizing the village manager to sign a municipal advisor services agreement with Munistat. Whereas the village has terminated its financial advisory services agreement with Capital Markets Advisors LLC, and whereas village staff has recommended that the village enter into a municipal advisory services agreement with Munistat with proposed services and compensation detailed in the proposal forwarded on June 17, 2022. And whereas Munistat has provided municipal advisor services to the town of Ossining, now therefore be it resolved that the village manager is authorized to sign the municipal advisor services agreement with Munistat, 12 Roosevelt Avenue, Port Jefferson, New York, pursuant to the terms and conditions of the June 17, 2022 proposal. May I have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Any comments?
I just want to find out a little bit more in detail of what does that look like right now.
The reason
agreement-
we're doing this
The
or
reason
what
we're
the
doing that.
contract
Yeah,
looks
the
like?
reason we're doing it. Yeah, the reason why we're doing
That was
that.
in the email. Okay, Stuart, you want to run through that?
I'll be happy to. Thank you, Mayor. Our current advisor bonding, Capital Markets Advisors, was recently named as a defendant in a lawsuit brought by the Securities and Exchange Commission in the Western District of New York involving the city of Rochester, and also named as a defendant are two principals of Capital Markets Advisors, Richard Gansey and their president, Richard Tortora, with whom we've dealt in the past. I recognize that a complaint is just that. They are allegations. The allegations in here involve serious assertions of fraud with regard to certain bond offerings that were made by the city of Rochester, for which Capital Markets Advisors was the advisor. Given the allegations in the complaint and the fact that a complaint of this magnitude will probably take a while to be resolved, staff was of the view that it would be better to move to Munistat, which does provide similar services to the town, so that we don't have to have, in a sense, hanging over us the fact that our market advisor is a defendant in an SEC case. Again, it's certainly hoped that Capital Markets Advisors, Mr. Gansey and Mr. Tortora, as well as the city of Rochester, are now found not liable with regard to these charges. Mr. Tortora sent around a fairly lengthy statement as to why the charges should be dismissed. But right now, those allegations are out there. They are brought by the SEC, which is a federal agency, and staff thought it was best to terminate the relationship with Capital Markets and go with Munistat. One of the reasons we acted so quickly is that there is a filing requirement due on the 30th of June. And rather than have CMA do the filing, we thought it would be best to use Munistat. Village Treasurer Brennan spoke with the folks at Munistat. They are ready, willing, and able to do the filing for June the 30th and to proceed further with the village. So that's the long and short of it.
Thank you, Stuart. The reason why, and Mayor, I did read that email. The reason why I'm asking this question is because we usually send out an RFP, sure, as a request of proposals for different stuff, you know, and in this case, we not. So I want to make sure that the public understands why we're doing what we have to do is because of this, not because we choosing someone, it's just because what we have to do to get this filing done. Just more like, I hate to say this word, the transparency portion of that, you know, we need to make sure that we are informing our community the reasons why we're doing that. So thank you, Stuart, for that. I appreciate
I
it.
appreciate Deputy Mayor. And I think the plan would be that we would ultimately do an RFP, but we're, you know, in a sense where we have an emergency situation and we just needed to do it. And so this allows us to at least go with Munistat. Again, an advantage is since the finance department is familiar with them because they work with the town, it should be more seamless in that regard. So that's why it's being done. But again, in transparency, it would certainly be anticipated that there will be an RFP for these services, perhaps even before the for next year, so that we can deal with that.
And we've been through this before, and the firm itself may be found to be in fine shape and may make some changes, and they would be considered. That's happened to us before, where a firm went through some legal issues, cleaned up what was broken or whatever they were involved in, and they're back on the table, if you will. So that's very helpful. Thank you for all of that, gentlemen. Anybody else? Questions or comments? Okay, Stuart.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Resolution C, donation of Little Free Library from the Ossining Public Library Foundation. Resolved that the Board of Trustees gratefully acknowledges the donation of a Little Free Library from the Ossining Public Library Foundation, such Little Free Library to be located at Henry Gordine Park. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Any comments or questions?
No.
I think it's a nice location. I've been going by that area. More and more families like in that park, the ice cream, the whole thing. And who doesn't want more books available to more people? I think it's great. Hope it's successful. Very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Stuart?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution D, authorize issuance of requests for proposals for Youth Bureau Needs Assessment. Resolved that the village manager is authorized to issue a request for proposals for the preparation of a needs assessment for the Village of Ossining Youth Bureau. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second. What is the needs assessment? What is this exactly?
Maddi, can you?
I sure
Okay.
can. So as everyone knows, the Youth Advisory Board had their first meeting, I believe it was on June 9th. Where Mike Garcia, our Youth Services Director, was able to sort of share with the folks assembled what the Youth Bureau has been working on since it was established last year, and what the Youth Bureau is looking to work on as its next big project, and that's going to be the needs assessment. So basically, it is something for which we've gotten grant money to do, but because of the price, Stuart and I sort of conferred with Mr. Garcia and decided that we should put out an RFP. So my understanding of what's actually required, and we can certainly send this around once it has its final tweaks, is trying to understand particularly what are the needs of youth in our community. So there's going to be a lot of different components to that. One giant section is going to be a public engagement session or multiple sessions, individual stakeholder interviews, focus groups, to sort of understand what in particular are the needs of our community, of folks who are going to be using the Youth Bureau or folks that are not using the Youth Bureau, and why not. And so this is something that, also based on best practices and trends, we'll be able to sort of give some direction to Mike and the Youth Advisory Board as they sort of plot a course forward for what sorts of programming they want to see come down the pike, what sorts of grants they should be applying for, so that we can, appropriately address the needs of folks who live here and are looking to avail themselves of these services.
Yeah, I mean, I was at that meeting, there are lots of good intentions, and there are educators on the board, and there are people involved with youth for many years. But it felt to all of us, I think really without exception, that you not only have to know the theory of things, but you actually have to do a check-in with the people that you're serving, and in this case, the youth. Not always the easiest demographic to sort of say, how do you see the future at the age of 14 or 15, you know, and think in those terms. So you need to have some metrics in place, and even more than that, you need to sort of draw some lines so that you work off of something, and the youth that comes in or doesn't. So Mike Garcia has tried a couple of things and people haven't shown up, and other things, lots of people showed up. And so how do you know how to move forward? And the grants is a really good point, because when you go for these grants, you really have to explain, how are you going to measure? Who are you serving? Who really wants this? I mean, we might all think it's a great idea, but you know, the kids may not think it's a great idea and wouldn't show up. You know, what are they missing? What do they want? And some of the conversation, to be honest, also said that while studies have been done in Ossining, COVID has really shifted the paradigm a bit, and we're not sure that we have all the right boots on the ground. And so it was thought that we should put something like this together. And go to whatever category of youth and however you define it, and at least, you know, sort of test some theories and go directly to the folks who we want coming to the programs. And I forgot who's actually working with him on it. There's a group that's actually quite expert at this in other parts of the county. So it wouldn't just be like us folks on the board doing this, just to be clear that that's the other reason we want to put it out there.
Right. I know Mr. Garcia has spoken to a couple firms who do this, not just for youth bureaus, but for other youth engagement programs. But again, because of the price that we're anticipating it's going to cost, again, paid for out of grant money, but still subject to procurement, you know, we thought a short RFP would be the best way to make sure we get a competitive price for the work.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. I'm actually very much in support. I'm not the only one on the committee, obviously, but at least I would, you know, when I heard it, it seemed like the right path to follow.
So, Maddi, I guess, what's the budget?
So the county, this is a little bit complicated. So the county apparently gave a grant that is several $1,000s more than we are likely to need for this. So it will be more than covered by what we've gotten. But my understanding from Mr. Garcia is that we're looking at somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Can I call for the vote, Mayor?
Yep.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Resolution E, authorizing the village manager to reside any place within Westchester County. Whereas by resolution dated June 15, 2022, the Board of Trustees authorized the mayor to sign an employment agreement with Karen DeTore, whereby Ms. DeTore would be reappointed as the village manager effective June 10, 2022. And whereas Village Charter Section C2-8 provides in part, the village manager, clerk, corporation counsel, and treasurer are appointed officers. All officers so appointed must be residents of the village of Ossining and qualified to vote under the provisions of this charter, except that the Board of Trustees by resolution may permit the village manager to reside any place within Westchester County. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees authorizes the current village manager to reside any place in Westchester County. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Just so you know, when I went to sign it, what we looked at, I went to Stuart and just pointed out that it said that the village manager has to live in the village. Karen actually lives in the town of Ossining. And at that point, and we've had somebody who lives even outside, and we asked her to move into the village. So we made it county. That's what we're voting on, and that actually has to be changed by resolution.
So refresh my memory. For some reason, I want to say we changed this a while back.
You changed it for my position.
No, because we had we had a village
Debbie.
manager. Yeah, no, I know we did for yours, but I thought we did because we had a village manager did not live in Ossining at all.
I I can tell you this, I went back to my resolutions. Now, some of them could have been before the time that my computer got fried, so I may not have them. I didn't find one. I know that in the case of my position, the board actually amended the charter because the code specifically said that the corporation council must live in the village, and that was changed to the town of Ossining. But I did not find a resolution as relates. I can say this much: when Karen was appointed, there was no similar resolution. I didn't see one. So this way, it just basically,
Yeah, and that's fine. No, it's weird because, obviously
know.
we had the building inspector do the same thing, a couple of positions that were very similar that we have changed. One of the assistant village manager, needs to be in the village of Ossining. She cannot move out of the village itself. No, but
For the public record, he's kidding.
Yeah.
No, we had one that moved into the village, if you recall.
No, I do, but
Anyway,
That one,
I know. I was
yeah,
surprised
that
too,
one.
Manny.
okay, I'm good,
But now we're cleaning it up. So I noticed it. I went to Stuart yesterday when I was signing, and there we are.
anyone else? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. May I have a motion to adjourn this special meeting to executive session for matters of litigation and real property?
Second.
Any questions, comments? I don't think so.
All those in
Stuart?
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
What happened? Somebody say something? No. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. 9:13 on the 22nd of June. Have a good evening. We do not have meetings next Wednesday. It's a fifth Wednesday.
Maddie, you'll let Bill know?
He's already been informed. Yes.
Perfect, my dear. Thanks. See you on the other side.
Good night.
Good night, folks.